Well, Browns fans, I have tried my best to inject some positivity into these post-game reports each week, the pre-game reports, my weekly practice reports, and not get to the point where I'm about to say what I'm going to say. But this is a very bad Browns football team. There's no way to beat around the bush anymore. They fall today 34-13 to the Commanders, and just about nothing went right. Spencer German with you here from Landover, Maryland, in Northwest Stadium, where Washington calls home. They beat down the Browns today. And Anthony, we're going to ask at the end of this episode, where do they go from here? But I don't even know that there's like a clear-cut answer as we start this conversation, because this offense right now is abysmal. It's unwatchable. There's just too many things wrong, too many things to correct. And I don't know what the fix is with a team right now that's sitting at 1-4. And for all intents and purposes, like, their season is nearly over. They have their work cut out for them the rest of the way. They're going to sit there and tell you, well, hey, it's a long season. There's still a lot of games left, but we know better than to just, believe that wholeheartedly. This season is right now a mitigated disaster.
Yeah, I mean, it's
an unmitigated disaster. Sorry.
Unmitigated.
Yes. A mitigated disaster would be a good thing. This is an unmitigated disaster.
It's as bad as it gets. Like, we're sitting here with, I don't know. I don't think it's even a hot take to say one of the worst teams in football, the worst team in football. I don't know if you lined up tomorrow and played the Carolina Panthers, like, how that game would go. Like, I have no confidence in it, and I would predict we would win in our story, but like,
did the Jaguars win today? I don't even remember.
Jaguars they beat Joe Flacco, and
did they beat, even though Joe Flacco had like 360 yards passing and 3 touchdowns, huh?
Outside of every NFL stadium that had a game outside of the one you're at was the most electric day in NFL football. Literally, except for that stadium that you're in right there, because the Baltimore Ravens and the Cincinnati Bengals play a whole different sport than what the Browns play. That game was electric. All of them across the board. Joe Flacco throws for 390 yards. The guy's 39 years old. He wore our uniform about 5 months ago. What could have been, I guess. But all in all, man, it's I'll say it every week. I try to see it positively. I don't even know where to go from here, because this team is just very, very bad, and there's no solution. And like, there's not one thing. We're like, hey, if you fix that, you'll win a bunch of football games. It's like 15 different things.
Yeah, well, I'll say this. There was one thing that was electric today on the football field behind me, and it was Jaden Daniels. I mean, he was the real deal. And the Browns players in the locker room after the game, they said like they didn't, not in a disrespectful way, but they were like, what we saw from Jaden was what we expected. Like, we weren't surprised by what he was able to do, because we knew he was good on tape, and the defense just didn't really have a way to stop it. But that to me, like, listen, 34 points allowed. We're obviously going to talk about the defense, and they still have some issues of their own. But this is not a day for me where I start with the defense, because I just think the offense, I mean, it's putrid football that they're playing. I'm going to read you some of the numbers here. Outgained 434 to 212. So they doubled up their yard total. The Commanders did. They were 1 of 13 on third down. That first third down conversion didn't happen until the fourth quarter, right before they scored their first touchdown of the game, which came with 7 minutes to go in the fourth quarter. And at that point, Washington brought in Marcus Mariota, and the game was over. So, like, that speaks to itself. The offensive line gave up 7 more sacks of Deshaun Watson. They were outrushed 215 to 104. They had 4 false start penalties by my count, and a host of other just issues up front and penalties that cost them both on both sides of the ball. But Megs, like, I 5 weeks, like, I understood that it might be a slow start for the offense. I understood that there was going to be some growing pains with the new system and not getting reps in the preseason. But like, this was supposed to be the stretch where you could work all those things out. You had the Giants, the Raiders, and the Commanders back to back to back. And instead you're sitting here and you still don't have an identity. Like, that's one of the biggest, as this game ended, and the piece that I wrote, you can find it up at Cleveland Browns on SI, like my post-game immediate reaction piece. I asked the question, or I said, I wrote out, like, 5 weeks in, we still don't know what this team's identity is on offense. And I thought by now that question would be answered in spades. And we're still sitting here scratching our head, wonder what they do well.
I have 2 thoughts on those things you said. The first is Deshaun and his post-game presser, which again is on our YouTube channel. Go check that out. But like, he even said the same thing. He's like, yeah, we're still like trying to find our way. And I'm like, wait a second. Wait.
5 weeks in.
like we're 5 weeks in, we can't run the football. The reason you're 1 for 13 on third down is because you're on third. Today it was 3rd and 8 every single time, 3rd and 8 plus. They average 8.5 yards to go, and on the season you're averaging 9 yards to go on third down. No offense is going to ever be good doing that. And this Browns team isn't. The second thought is that it was a good one. I had a good one.
Like the Browns offensive playbook, it just disappeared. It's gone now.
I remember it. The microcosm of the entire season, right? You come out the second half, you're down 24-3, first play of the half, fumble. You recover it. You hit Amari Cooper twice. Amari Cooper takes it into the red area. You got 1st and goal from the 2 or 3 maybe, and false start. Backs you up, sack, and then you kick a field goal at 4th and 12. Oh, and you use a timeout. So it was like in the time of the third down, you were going to go for it on 4th down, but you had 12 men in the huddle. It's just unorganized, which is unlike Kevin Stefanski. It's unmotivated. This team doesn't care. Like nobody gives a crap what happens on the field, and they're not good. They're dropping passes. All the things that are wrong with the football team, this Cleveland Browns group has.
You brought up that sequence, by the way, and you laid it out perfectly. Like all the mistakes, there was the 2 penalties, the timeout, a drop pass in the end zone by Jerry Jeudy was part of that sequence as well, an incompletion to Amari Cooper. Then you have the 12 men in the huddle. I do want to clarify that play specifically because I know there's a lot of people on social media who were sort of reading into the situation, and they thought like Deshaun just up and quit in the middle of the game and walked because he walked out of the huddle to the sideline. And I want to be clear, that is not what happened. So I understand, there's Deshaun is a hot topic and all that. To be fair, completely fair to him, that was not what was happening in that moment. They had 12 men in the huddle. They had just called a timeout a couple plays before, as you mentioned, and he knew they weren't going to blow another timeout. So he basically conceded the delay of game penalty instead of the 12 men in the huddle penalty, because the delay of game is just like a spot foul and you move on and you kick the field goal. And he didn't want to get the 12 men in the huddle one. So that was what happened there, just to clarify. But yeah, like that whole sequence, to your point, is a microcosm of this team. They shoot themselves in the foot with drop passes, with penalties. They can't get out of their own way.
That's it.
And by now, you thought these things would be fixed, but and you said it earlier as well, Anthony. Like, that's the biggest thing too. 5 weeks in, and it's the same mistakes, and it's the compounding mistakes. It's not just that they're still committing penalties. It's like they haven't corrected that. They haven't corrected the offensive line issues where they can't communicate properly to block up the blitzes that are coming their way. And now there's this blueprint out there that the Giants kind of showed, where if you blitz this team, show them different stunts, show them different looks than they're used to, they're not going to be able to block it up, and you're going to get pressure on Deshaun. It's just going to throw everything out of whack.
We're really close to getting very disrespectful when teams play us, because there's no threat of anything. There's nothing that happened today where you're like, ooh, you can hang your hat on that, especially on the offensive side. Defense was okay. But on the offensive side, it's there was nothing that was good today. The offensive line was bad. They can't block a blitz, and if you just overpower them, they can't do anything. Deshaun wasn't seeing it well. Drop passes in the secondary, or excuse me, when you're when they were throwing it, and they can't run it. That's the biggest problem in this offense.
Yeah, they're behind the sticks constantly.
They can't run the football, and they refuse, which is so shocking to me. I don't know where the disconnect is, because they refuse to get under center and run it. I don't know if it's, hey, Deshaun saying you don't like it. I don't know if it's Ken Dorsey doing it, because that's what we're so good at.
I think some of that is this new offense isn't built that way. This new offense is built around Deshaun. It's built around shotgun. It's built around pistol. It's not built around being under center, because that's not what Deshaun does well. And so that raises other questions, but we don't have to have that conversation right now. Yeah. I just think there's so much wrong. It's nothing that Nick Chubb is going to fix. The offensive line continues to be a problem. DeJuan Jones, once again, a turnstile. Guys were blowing right by him. He didn't know what to do. His problems persist. Maybe one positive is that the only time I heard Joe Will's name today was when he had a false start penalty. That was it. Other than that, I didn't really hear his name, which is usually a good sign as an offensive lineman.
I wouldn't get too excited to watch the tape on that one.
Oh, was it bad?
It wasn't great. It wasn't great.
I guess I just didn't notice him
It was
specifically in this game more so
relative.
than other games. But
I
I trust you. I trust your football eye, given that you were a former quarterback, Anthony, that you saw that a little bit better than I did today.
Yeah, maybe relative to the rest of the group, it was good, but that's not saying much. I hate talking like that because like I couldn't go out there and do it, so I try not to be negative. But man, oh man, that was
Well, but
it was a
you're not
painful
paid
watch.
millions of dollars to be out there doing it either because you're
True.
not an NFL player. But yeah.
That's true. That's true. It was a painful watch today, man. That was painful.
Yeah, and you alluded to it, and it's part of the equation here too on offense. But Deshaun still, I really thought, and I said at pregame that this was an opportunity for him to have back-to-back like good games for the first time since he's come to Cleveland. I believed it. Like this Washington defense is not very good, but they looked like the what is it, the 82
85 Bears?
Bears, the
Yeah.
85 Bears. I don't know why I thought 82. They looked like
Early
the 85 Bears with the way that
I,
they were able to get to the quarterback, rush the passer, get Deshaun down. He was rattled all day. And again, a lot of that is the offensive line, but some of that too is he's just not seeing the ball well, or see, he's just not seeing the field well. Excuse me. And even when he like there was one play in the first half where he had Amari open on like an out route towards the sideline, wide open, had beaten his man. And Deshaun, I remember it. Like I watched on the replay. Pocket was perfect. It was one of the rare times when there was no pressure in his face. Pocket was really good, and he throws it wide of him.
Mhm.
I don't know if it's because he's so used to getting hit that he's now like speeding himself up. I don't know what it is, but I go back to the thing that we continue to say about Deshaun. He was supposed to rise above these things. Like even when the offensive line is playing poorly, he was supposed to be able to make the plays for you and deliver the throws in tight windows and in tight coverage and make those plays. And it's just not there. And then even when he does have time, it's just not there. So yeah, like I give him credit for what he did in Las Vegas last week. I didn't put that game on him. This week, he's back to being part of the reason why they didn't play well today on offense. And I understand why there's questions still about him under center and you know whether or not the Browns are basically going to have to admit that this was a raw deal at some point because he's just still not seeing things the way that you were hoping that he would as this player that you traded 3 first-round picks for.
Yeah, it was really it just was like one step forward, 4 steps back because I'm in agreement with you. I thought he played well last week, but then comes out today and just is like that. It's the Deshaun we're used to. Every time he drops back, he kind of skips around. His mechanics are bad. He just and every time he goes to throw, you don't have confidence on when that there's somebody on the other side of the throw that's going to make the catch. And it's like I made a joke earlier about about watching the Bengals and the Ravens finish after our game finished. And I was like, every time Burrow and Lamar dropped back, it was like you knew there was going to be a guy open. They were going to make the right decision. And it's like, we're not even in that stratosphere, you know? It was shockingly bad, and it leaves you feeling horrible. And yes, after the game, coach said he's not making a quarterback change. The conversation's happening. Like if you're having to answer, we're answering that now in week 5. You always hear that, like once they start answering the question that it's happening behind closed doors. But like the moment that happens is like you shake the whole team up, and they got to be ready to make that decision. It's closer than, in my opinion, it's closer today than we were yesterday. But yeah, I fear that's happening soon. We'll see.
Well, no, and it's funny because that question gets asked post game, and not that I don't think it's warranted. It just kind of caught me by surprise. A, because we're in week 5, and to be asking that question in week 5 is just absurd. But B, because I just like it didn't really cross my mind because I know what the outlook is for this contract. Like I know that they're sort of stuck with him moving forward. There's not an easy out, and they got to just kind of bite the bullet here. And because of that, I don't think they're going to make a quarterback change because they have to kind of see this thing through. But when it was asked, it kind of hit me, and I was like, yeah, I mean, I guess at this point, with how bad the offense is playing, you got to ask that question, and it's got to be a legitimate conversation, at least outside of the organization. Maybe the organization isn't going to start having it, but the fan base will certainly start having it for them, and they were already having it before this week. And there was a telling moment late in the fourth quarter when they sort of called off the dogs and Deshaun Watson was taken out of the game. Jameis Winston took over, and what Browns fans were left in the stadium, they cheered. I heard a small little cheer from Browns fans when Jameis Winston took over the offense. So
And
I'm just saying, man, like we've been around this team when there's some pressure from a backup quarterback to take over, and it only gets ugly and uglier from here.
yeah, it's really it's disappointing because as much as we thought things were going to change and things were different, we're back to where we're used to being, right? With this team being not very good and having
The
a
more
lot
things change, the more they stay the same, basically.
more things change, the more they stay exactly the same. It's disappointing and frustrating all at the same time.
Yeah, so questions loom for Deshaun Watson, and I think this offense as a whole, as we kind of laid out there, it was interesting. I took some time to really ask. Well, we'll get to that here in a second because I do think we should talk about the defense a little bit too. I don't remember, Anthony, the exact margins, and if you have this pulled up, it'd be helpful. But of what the time of possession discrepancy was. Um, it might be closer than I'm thinking it is, but it felt like Washington had the ball for a lot longer than the Browns just because they were putting together these drives. And maybe it's because they did score a lot of them pretty quickly. But yeah, I mean, it like this defense, and this is part of the reason why I think it was fair for us to start with the offense because the defense had issues too. Tackling, still a problem. Taking bad angles, still a problem. Guys are getting beaten covered still on big plays. There was the big one to Terry McLaurin, which I don't even put that on Denzel Ward completely because it looked like, in watching the replay, he sort of hesitated for a second, and so did McLaurin for what it's worth because I think they both thought that Daniels was kind of dead to rights in the backfield.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden he breaks free like he tends to do because he's that kind of elusive quarterback. And he's got McLaurin sort of streaking across the field, and Denzel just can't hang with him. And he puts the perfect ball on the money to him. So I don't even know if I blame Denzel for that, but they're still getting up the big plays in the secondary. The tackling is still poor. There's still some issues there, but part of me is like, they early on in this game, like they were holding their own. Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah played a great game. He missed a couple tackles that were important, and that's part of the story here. But he caused a fumble. He gets an interception to stone Washington at the goal line on their second series of the game. Like he was doing all the things that you're expecting him to do and make some plays and give the ball back to the offense. And when the offense is going 3 and out, or 5 plays and punting, like it's I don't know what else you're supposed to do. Like the defense is going to get gassed at some point. They can't just hold the opponents off the scoreboard forever. So like that was just another like to me the defense's problems became bigger problems or were highlighted today because of the offense's problems. If that makes sense what I'm saying. So yes, like the tackling was still bad and there were still issues there. But the more they're on the field, the more that's going to expose itself. And that's my biggest issue is the offense wasn't giving them enough time to catch their breath and be able to efficiently and affect this game late in it and down the stretch.
And truth of the matter is, in my opinion, at least in the first quarter and a half, they did their job. Like this offense, Jaden Daniels in this offense is one of the best in the league. And they had turned him over, and he wasn't comfortable. He was you could tell, like when he hit the past couple weeks, like when he played against Arizona and played against Cincinnati, he was dropping back, very comfortable in the pocket, delivering great throws. Early on in this game, the defense was doing what they were supposed to do. Now, that throw to Terry you thought was going to unlock it, but it didn't. The defense settled down and got going again. But in the NFL, big plays like that are going to happen. These guys are the best at what they do. So you can't expect to like shut teams out, which what they have to do. You can't expect the defense to hold Washington to 10 points. They competed early, but then also, Spence, not only from a physical standpoint do you get worn down with like long drives and then the offense not sustaining any drives, but mentally too. It's like we got to stop here. The perfect example was the field goal we got in the first half. The defense makes a nice stop. After we punt it down there, pin them deep, defense makes a nice stop. We get the ball on the 50-yard line, make one first down, and kick a 51-yard field goal.
It was 51, yeah.
Unacceptable. Like, it's unacceptable. This is supposed to be a complimentary football team, and it's not. And this defense, you just get worn down. It's like, we can't do this, drive in and drive out to try to just keep the offense in it.
Well, and that's why, again, I'm not saying the defense doesn't have its warts. I'm not saying there aren't issues that need corrected.
Right.
The missed tackles is the biggest thing because that's egregious. Grant Delpit was missing some today. I mentioned JOK missed some, but others did as well. And like that has to get cleaned up. And a lot of that is just about will. Like you can work on it at practice, but guys just got to make the plays. Last year they were making those tackles. This year they're not. But I just can't. I can't overstate that stuff. The defensive, shortcomings they get exposed more when the defense is on the field for longer and when the offense is having these short drives. So I listen, they have their fair share of issues. I think the offensive issues are a bigger problem, and it's then therefore leading to the defensive problems being a bigger problem as well. Um, and I don't know where to point the finger. In the locker room afterwards, Greg Newsome talked about how you can point the finger at one person, but there's four pointing back at you. Like there's so much that's wrong on both sides of the ball. It's a lot of different things. Kevin Stefanski, he alluded to like everybody has to be better, coaching has to be better. And some of that is just cliche coach speak, like he always tends to do. He's not going to give you much. He's always just going to say, we need to be better. That's his go-to line this year. But at the same time, man, like there is some truth in that
Yeah.
there's just so much wrong. There's so many problems with this team right now on offense, on defense, on special teams. You can't just put it all on one person. But the collection of the sum of their parts is, as we said at the top of this recap, a bad football team.
Yeah, that's exactly where they're at right now. Is just you scratch your head because you don't know where to go because your offensive line is old in some parts, it's bad in others. Your quarterback's not playing good, your receivers aren't playing good, the running backs aren't playing good. Like you don't know where to find the solution because you need a lot of them. You need a lot of them.
So that opens up the question that you kind of allude to there. Where do they go from here, Anthony? Because and this is the big thing I was really asking the locker room to guys and post game with guys was just what needs to change. And there was a common theme from I talked to Joe Batonio, I talked to Greg Newsome, even like Deshaun alluded to it in his press conference. Like the week of practice, all these guys feel like is going well. Like they feel like they're putting in a good game plan. They feel like they're productive. They feel like they're correcting a lot of the problems that we see on the field. But for some reason, it's not translating on Sundays or on game days. And that's the problem. So I was asking guys, like, what needs to change so that changes? What needs to change so that on Sundays when you take the field, it does translate? And nobody really had the answers. They just said, like, yeah, I mean, I think we're putting in good work. And maybe the best answer actually came from Joe Batonio, which, well, I know we'll have his video up on the YouTube channel as well. But he basically said, like, it's not just one at the end of the day, like we got to win our one-on-ones and everybody has to like do their part. Everybody has to do their job, not to just channel Bill Belichick here, but like 100%, like, and that I think that's what I mentioned with like the tackling thing. It comes down to just like each person doing what they're supposed to do. And that's not happening consistently enough for the offense to move the ball consistently and have success, or frankly for the defense to get the stops that they need and keep teams off the scoreboard either.
It's the where do you go from here question's scary because guess what? In 7 days, they're going to be teeing that thing up again and going. And it's like every problem that you're looking at is not solved over the course of 7 days. You can't change an offense up. You can't change a defense up. You maybe could change a play caller. Maybe, I don't know. I think the one place you can go is at quarterback, and they're not, like you said, they're not going to do
it. That, and I guess there's reinforcements coming with Nick Chubb, but that also means that your offense becomes more run-based. And again, they built this offense around Deshaun. Now, they've had success under Kevin Stefanski running the football, so maybe that makes some sense, but will they just go back to the Kevin Stefanski system that we know Deshaun struggles to run? That's another question. But you're right. Like, I don't know. I'm not clear on what the answer is where they go from here either.
Because it's hard, too, because, like, even what you just suggested there, like, that doesn't – they can't – you don't know what's in the playbook, what's not, what they can do, what they can major in. Like there's too many problems to have answers to right now. They're in a scary spot, man. Like, because your stars are old. It's going to get really loud. There's a couple teams out there that are competing that need receivers. You got one who doesn't seem to care about football right now. And Amari feels like he's very disconnected from what's going on. And it's like, it's going to get really loud. You may hear Myles Garrett, you may hear Nick Chubb. I don't know what you're going to hear because the truth of the matter is this team's 1-4. They are not competing for the playoffs anymore. You're trying to get back to 500 and it's going to be a long year. I mean, you got 3 months left to try to right the ship. And I don't know what righting the ship even looks like. I don't know what success is for the rest of the year. You don't know what that even looks like.
Yeah. And like you said, man, like maybe the big changes come in the form of a quarterback change at some point. The more and more the offense struggles, the louder those conversations are going to get outside the building. And they can say they block it out. But we also know that this team didn't bring back Joe Flacco because I'd like to imagine because of similar reasonings. They didn't want to have to deal with the noise of, well, if Deshaun struggles, we got to go to Joe Flacco. But now you're going to have the same sort of thing with Jameis Winston if the offense continues to not be able to move the football and produce offensives and produce scores consistently. There's a lot that's a mess, and I think that is probably the biggest reason why neither of us, and maybe even the Browns themselves, can't really point to any, because you asked the question like what needs to change, and a lot of the answers, it took them some time to think up. Like Deshaun sort of stood there for a second, was like, like I got to think about this. I don't know that they like even they have the answers, which is alarming. And I don't know, maybe the answers are outside this building. Deshaun was asked point blank, like, do you think you have the pieces to succeed? And normally when he gets asked that question, he says like, yeah, they're my guys. I believe in Amari. I believe in Jerry Jeudy. I believe in whoever. And he actually kind of left the door open for, he basically just kind of conceded to, well, hey, I let Andrew Berry and Kevin Stefanski handle those things. Yeah. And it was kind of interesting that he didn't just go to defend his guys immediately. So I don't know if maybe he said tonight he needs more offensive line help or what, but I thought that was kind of interesting.
I don't know. It's a tough spot, man.
Can you play quarterback for him, Anthony? What do you think?
My arm's sore. I threw it the other day, just throwing it around, and holy cow, I woke up with a sore wing.
You beat Mount Union one time. That's pretty good.
One time, way long ago, and they didn't have. Yeah, I don't want to stand back there in the pocket with the way things are right now.
Yeah, I don't think anybody does.
Yeah.
All right, guys. We ask you if you have answers to the question of where the Browns go from here. I'm sure we'll get some sarcastic ones in the comments section on the Cleveland Browns and SI YouTube channel, because I know you guys love sarcasm, Browns fans. So whatever you want to share with us in the comments, if you want to vent about the game, the loss today, we're here for you. Hopefully this conversation, I don't know if this conversation helped, but hopefully you felt like we were speaking the same language in terms of how you guys are feeling, because there is a lot wrong with this team right now. And as I said at the top, there's no other way to put it. They're a bad football team. But we have more coverage for you. As we sort of mentioned throughout, we got post-game press conferences and reaction from players in the locker room going up at the Cleveland Browns on SI YouTube channel. You can also read all of our work from during the game, after the game, over at Cleveland Browns on SI, or more specifically, si.com/NFL/Browns. And we got more stuff coming up post-game for you as well, things that were said post-game from players, coaches, etc. And obviously more coverage going into your Monday and into week 6, which is, as Anthony alluded to, just around the corner. 7 days from now, they'll be back out here trying to correct these problems yet again. So, guys, we appreciate you jumping on in with us. For Anthony Moeglin, I'm Spencer German. Be sure to keep on following along for more coverage of your Cleveland Browns.